Hello everyone, I am the ghost of Stephen Bell, aka Sakui, and welcome back to what is objectively going to be the most frightening episode of the Aura History Untold Dev Diaries. If you're watching this on YouTube, then make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell as we release new episodes every single week here on the channel. Also be sure to sign up for the Insider program, as our next technical alpha will be available to eligible members soon, if you dare. The Insider program is free to everyone. You just need to go and fill out the survey for your PC specs to see if you meet the minimum requirements. In today's haunting episode, we're going to be taking a look at the improvements and the triumphs of Aura History Untold. Now, to be clear, those are systems that are in the game, though the game has seen many improvements during game development and undoubtedly will be a triumph upon release. Today, we're just going to be talking about the in-game improvements and triumph systems. So to guide us through this ghoulish journey is none other than Michelle Menard, Design Director at Oxide Games. So Michelle, welcome back to the show. I see that you're dressed for the occasion. Because you dared?
I did dare, indeed. Thanks for having me back. Love your costume as well.
Thank you, and I'm looking a little crazy right now. But I figure that if we're going to be like a Ghost of Christmas past, we might as well make it a violent past,
Indeed, and we match. It's all good.
Now, Michelle, last time we had you on the show, we learned about your background in the game industry. So let's mix it up and start by asking what the day-to-day is like in the design department of Aura. What's it like at the height of development?
So the team is super duper busy right now. This is definitely like the wild time in the office, but it's also the super fun time, in my opinion.
Oh, I can see. Yes, definitely.
Nice. Yeah. Everyone's doing this right now in the office. It's not just me. We're all coordinating. Totally. Everyone is really focused right now on actually collecting player feedback and then making iterations and changes based upon that feedback. So we're running playtests internally constantly. There is an external council that we use, which are playtesters out in the world that we have kind of entrusted with really playing the game every day and then sending us feedback. We interact with them on these forum boards. It's really great. We've got the Insider program. And as you mentioned, the technical alphas, we get a lot of feedback from there. You are testing. And so right now it is just constant playing the game internally, collecting feedback from outside sources, and then making changes based upon. Then everyone in the team basically has kind of like a system or section that they own. And so they're all sort of working in concert together to just improve the game.
What was the design process like for choosing each improvement that players would have access to in certain eras or ages?
Kind of like anything else, it has been a journey. We had an initial list very early in development, back in like prototype 1 phases, and probably about 60% of those buildings have survived, and those are kind of like the core ones, which you need. Like, what kind of systems have to go on. We gotta have to make food and wood and stone, so all those kind of like harvester buildings will have to be there. But then the more fun part was like, well, then what about all the improvements that can provide like certain kinds of buffs or different playstyle advantages or disadvantages? And then that's where like the actual more like nitty gritty fun part of like, well, if we wanted to do something that boosted like citizen happiness, what kind of building would that be? We could put in a racetrack or something. I don't know. Because all these games have similar buildings at the beginning, but we actually had a lot of fun later in the game, really opening it up and looking at like more modern constructions.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, no, that's some interesting ideas. I can only imagine a costume party could be involved in one of those. Yeah, no, makes total sense.
I wanted karaoke and it didn't make it.
Oh, that would have been great. That would have been great. Okay, so improvements, of course, are going to come in a lot of different shapes. I mean, as you already are just discussing. From there's harvesters, military improvements, all different kinds of things. Can you give me a rundown on like what each type and how they're going to impact the player strategy are?
So as we mentioned, there are harvesters, and those are kind of your core resource gatherers and creators. So things like farms and mines and logging camps will create those core resources, but they will also harvest other sort of map-based resources that are there. So like farms will obviously harvest farmy resources like plants and animals, cows, sheep, horses, wheat, that kind of stuff. Mines will obviously all your kind of ores and gemstones, and then logging camps do your wood products. So they're not just, I need food, let me plop these down, but there's some strategy there about where you want to put them on the map. We've also then, of course, got your military improvements, which can help create buffs for your different units. We have crafters. And crafters are one of the newer improvement types that we've kind of added into the genre space that lets you create items that can then be employed either as equipment to create like new kinds of armies. So if you want to make a spear, that's how you make a spearman. You got to make some spears first. But you also can make luxury goods. And those are items that you can then deploy onto your cities and create timed buffs. So they're kind of like, giving jewelry or, feasts to your people. And you can craft those things and then store them up and basically do like a giant bomb of like buffs on cities whenever you want to create a strategic advantage. And then, we've also got basically buildings that are for each of the major systems. So like there are ones that incorporate the religion system. There are ones that can tie into the citizen stats, like if you really want to manage to make people happier or more wealthy. So pretty much any avenue of play you want to deep dive into, there are improvements for that play style.
I see. Okay, that sounds like a lot. And in a lot of strategy games, I know the players can sometimes be overwhelmed with managing just how many numerous improvements there needs to be done. So how does Aura streamline that process to make it more enjoyable while also allowing players to be able to manage all those different tasks?
There are definitely a lot of possible improvements in the game, but with some of the ways where the tech system works, you aren't going to see all of those every single game. So you're not just going to basically unlock every single improvement every time you play. So that helps immediately. Another one.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah. The way you place them down, because they take up physical space on the map, they're not just a menu listing and a UI, you only are going to have so much space available to you. So there is this push and pull of like, I really want to build these improvements, but I've only actually got X number of slots left in these regions for this city. I now have to make a choice. And which one do I really want? Many of these improvements, once you put them down, they do supply a buff to your city or your nation, but a lot of them are kind of like fire and forget, and you can come back and like upgrade them later, but they're not something you need to manage turn to turn by any means. So it's, they're a lot of ways self-managing.
I see. Okay. And as you said, they're limited. You can't place
everything
on there at the same time.
Correct.
So I mean,
absolutely.
Upgrading and managing workers are very key at managing such a vast number of improvements. Could you provide some insight as to how, like the decision-making process when you're choosing improvements, like what should you try to upgrade first? Which one should you supply workers with? Like what should a player prioritize in the beginning?
So to some extent, it's going to go down to your personal playstyle, but there are a few that are always good ideas. So the way workers work is every single time your city upgrades, you get a new worker to put down somewhere. And there's a little UI notification on the city banner to let you know that he's available. And they basically improve the ability of that improvement, and whatever it does, it just will start to do it better. And most improvements, when you upgrade them, they just unlock additional worker slots to make them even better. So it's a very simple growth mechanic that's very easy to manage and remember. I like upgrading the village halls very early on because that lets your cities grow faster. So that's a favorite for me. And then I also sometimes will put extra workers very early on into the trading posts, which are one of the early improvements that can help make money, because I'm always a very heavy economy player, and I find if I have money, I can do whatever I want.
And a lot of these improvements, and speaking of money, they have to have some kind of maintenance. Like they're associated with maintenance costs. So how do those costs factor into a player's decision making when they're constructing and upgrading improvements?
Many improvements do, in fact, have a maintenance cost that's deducted turn over turn. It's not that high, though. We've actually played a lot with maintenance costs over the course of development, and we've toned them down a lot. Because one of the things we wanted to do was make the game pretty easy to jump into for new players. And so we found that if the maintenance costs were a little too beefy, it was very easy to death spiral swiftly if you did not know what you were doing. So we stopped that. And then instead we put the higher costs onto the upgrades and to the build costs themselves. So then it's a one-time purchase cost, but it's something you can see and plan for and make a good judgment call. Like, I need to save up 200 stone for this thing. I can do that and then choose to spend that whenever I want, versus I totally forgot that thing is eating 20 stone a turn. Ruh-rohs. There is a push and pull there, but a lot of it is based on this idea of a purchase economy where the player can then make those planned, informed decisions on.
All right, now I know fans are excited for our next segment, so let's jump into triumphs in Aura. Despite the obvious size difference between them, what exactly sets a triumph apart from other improvements?
And yeah, as you mentioned, there is definitely significant size difference. But more importantly, they are unique. And so they're all based on a real world piece of architecture or building or statue or something like that. And they're unlocked just like another normal improvement via technology. But unlike something like, a farm, which anyone, you can just build however you want of them, there can only be one Stonehenge. There can only be one Colossus of Rhodes. That's it. And so it's a race mechanic where, you've got to find it first in the technology deck. You have to save up the resources for it first and start building it first. And it's not just usually a simple resource cost. Almost all triumphs have a crafted component that is needed for them. So there's a bit more planning involved in making them too, and it takes a bit more effort. And whoever finishes it first, they're the one who gets to keep it. If you had started one and didn't finish in a time and someone beat you to it, we will refund some of your resources. So not a total loss for you, but it is still, in the end of the day, a race. And they're very cool too, that not only do they provide a very OP big buff for your nation, so they're worth getting, but they also give you an instant prestige boost as well. It's usually pretty significant, like, hundreds of prestige. And so it's something that is really worth vying for, especially early on if you're a little worried about getting, say, cut during one of those actor era transitions. They're a very easy way to boost your prestige.
Well, if there are a lot of different triumphs and they're supposed to be unique, what was the design process behind choosing real-world buildings and structures that you wanted to feature in the game?
There are certainly genre favorites that we had to definitely look at and include, and a lot of them you can find on those, like, what are the 7 ancient wonders of the world? Like, obviously we got to look at those. They're important for a reason. They're a reason those lists exist. They're important cultural buildings. They're important architectural triumphs. But why we also liked the word triumph was that it didn't necessitate that it was actually a building, like something that you could walk into. And so some of our triumphs are actually like giant statues or pieces of machinery. They are things that are triumphs in their own right for whatever it is they are doing. And then some of the other triumphs were things like really important pieces of architecture or statues. As I said, we looked far and afield, like from all different cultures, all different continents, to try to find things that was truly different, that were unique, that would look really neat placed on a map and with your city. And then some of the buildings we chose were also a bit more personal in nature. So something like the Johns Hopkins Hospital Complex is in the game, and that is a local hospital here in Baltimore. And we picked that because it was important for a lot of people here on the team. Like, they saved some people's kids' lives. They saved some people when they were fighting cancer. And so it was something that the team had a big personal connection to. And so some of the buildings were chosen for those reasons as well.
Okay, that's actually really cool. I love the little personal touches that are put in here. Thank you once again for joining us, Michelle. I had a blast checking out the vast array of improvements and triumphs while playing Aura, and hopefully the fans are going to get their chance soon.
Thank you again for having me. It's been a great time today. And yeah, everyone, if you haven't signed up yet for the Insider Program, please do so. TA3 is just around the corner. And if you have signed up for the Insider Program, make sure you sign up for TA3. It's going to be awesome.
Yes, and thank you to our fans who are watching. There is so much more to come, so you can stay up to date with the game by subscribing to our YouTube channel for future Dev Diary episodes. And also make sure to follow us on the social platforms of your choice and join the Insider Program, as she said, for an opportunity to play the game before launch. And don't forget to wishlist Aura History Untold on Steam. Lastly, we are giving away PC Game Pass codes on our brand new Facebook page every single Tuesday, and another code that is going out on Twitter every Wednesday, so be sure to follow along and answer each week's prompt for your own chance to win. Thank you once again, and my friends, happy Halloween.